Prosecutors proved that Somalis ripped off hundreds of millions of dollars from taxpayers as part of the so-called Feeding Our Future scam. And that's just one of their fraudulent organizations where they pretended to feed children in exchange for federal reimbursements. Somalis have also set up fake autism treatment centers on virtually every block, which is another scam that's cost hundreds of millions of dollars in just the past 5 years. Then there's the adult daycares, the normal daycares, the home health aides, the housing stabilization services, and so on. Somalis have scammed all of it. They've scammed everything. In fact, even before Nick Shirley's video came out, the state of Minnesota announced that they were pausing all new licenses for home and community-based human services providers because, quote, the unprecedented increase in provider applications over the past 5 years far outpaces the increase in people receiving services. So in other words, Somalis were clearly pillaging the treasury, and they were not being subtle about it.
So Matt brings up a couple things there. Again, glad he said Nick Shirley. That's the guy's name. I want to make sure I give him credit. And he says, he's pointing out this is the Somalis as a group. This is not a mistake. This is not individual Somalis scamming. This is a larger problem with the entire community. And we're recognizing that they're scamming this on every level. And very importantly, he points out they're just getting away with it. They were getting away with this, but they got caught because they weren't very subtle. Somali community, perhaps not as adept at fraud as many other communities. And this is critical because, as Matt points out here, the Somali community is absolutely responsible for what happened. Remember, this is a very old Democrat grift, right? Like, this is in no way new. The Democrats do this with housing. They do it with food programs. They do it with crime prevention programs. They do it with drug rehabilitation programs. They do it with all kinds of stuff across the board. They do it with universities. They do it. Everything they have is just a patronage program that is usually designed to funnel money to particular ethnic carve-outs. I hate to break it to you, but they recognize that really they don't need to buy a lot of white people votes. They buy votes from ethnic minorities who they can use to wedge against the larger American population. That's what the Democratic Party does. So yes, the Somalis are doing this here, but recognize that this is a common practice across many different diasporas in the United States. There are a lot of ethnic carve-outs where different communities get specific benefits for voting Democrat. They set up all the connections on purpose to make sure that all these different community leaders and everybody else gets taken care of. The whole thing is a grift from beginning to end. The Somalis are just getting called out because they are just so lazy and dumb with the whole thing that it's too obvious. But really, you could do this with several other ethnic communities, which probably won't get addressed. But the point is, more and more Republicans are recognizing this is not an individual bad actor problem. Like, the only way this works is if large chunks of a ethnic community work together in a conspiracy to do this kind of stuff, which is exactly what the Somali community was doing.
And really, that's the part of Nick's video that was so significant. I mean, everybody already knew what the Somalis were doing. We all knew that the average Somali has an IQ that hovers around the level of mental retardation. Scientifically speaking, that's the case. We all knew that half of the population of Somalia lives on roughly $1 a day. Yes, $1 a day. Something like 70% of the population is below the poverty line. They have an economy so primitive that it's hard to even comprehend it. And we all knew that there was never a universe in which importing hundreds of thousands of these people was ever going to improve this country.
That's huge. Like, I know you guys know this, right? Like, I know for you, you're like, oh, well, obviously, I've known this for years. But I want you to understand that Matt Walsh telling your grandpa about this is a huge deal. It's massive. Those are, I'll just say it, those are just alt-right talking points, straight up. Like, those talking points would have been considered alt-right in 2015. They would have got you banned off the internet. They certainly would have got you thrown off of Daily Wire and pretty much every other platform you can find. They would have got you banned from Twitter. They would have got you banned from YouTube. You would have been done. You would have been done as a person, not just because the left came to cancel you, because the right would have done it. You're talking about the collective IQ of a entire ethnos and saying that disqualifies them from being American. I mean, I'm not arguing with the facts he's presenting, but you need to understand the gravity of Matt Walsh making that argument. He also goes on to point out that they do not have functional economies. They don't have a culture that allows them to exist in the same way that they do. They are fundamentally incompatible with the people of the United States. And moving them here was never going to be a good idea, because collectively it's a community that doesn't do well, that is incompatible with our culture, that doesn't really have the cognitive or economic capacity to compete and to contribute. So of course they're going to show up here and need a bunch of handouts. The vast majority of them stay on welfare. I think the stat is something like 90%. As he pointed out, living off $1 a day in many cases. But coming here and getting welfare is literally, it's like Christmas. Like it's like they won the lottery. It's so wildly above their standard of living, we can't even explain it. It's like you getting taken to heaven. Like that's the level of a contrast we're talking about here. And so the fact that Matt Walsh is saying this, I don't even know. Like it's huge. It's rhetorically massive. And of course it's true. Like everything he's saying there is undeniable once it's laid out. Once you're allowed to make the obvious argument, these people can't function in our society. They're too dumb. Their culture is terrible. They're violent. They don't know how to take care of themselves. They can't contribute. They don't belong here. And bringing them here is a mistake. Like, again, you could never hear that from any conservative 10 years ago. And here we are, right? Like, this is a huge deal. So that entering into the zeitgeist, I think, again, is just another blow against the propositional nation. I'm sorry, it doesn't matter if a Somalian comes in and raises their hand and says, I believe in hard work and the Constitution. They are not American, and they can't be American. Like they can't. They're coming from a place that precludes them from being American. That's huge. And the fact that a prominent conservative acknowledges that is huge, because that blows the idea that just adopting the proposition is sufficient completely out of the water. I mean, what do you even do with that? There are people who simply cannot adopt the proposition. They are incapable culturally, intellectually. Like they just can't do it. And so there's no reason to bring them here. And that means that it can't just be a proposition. It means there's more than just the ideas that matter. It's not just about echoing the ideas. You have to have the capacity to live them out. You have to have a capacity to contribute to a society that's built on and believes in those ideas. And while there are certainly people from outside the United States who are capable of doing that, that number is much smaller than the liberals and even the conservatives are willing to admit. And as Americans, we should have the right to decide who's coming here, whether we want those communities to be here. And we should be able to prefer people from communities that we think will integrate and adapt, and those that won't. That's a huge step forward. It's a huge step forward. So I think that these are really some critical things that are going to highlight just how dead the idea of the propositional nation is. If the head of New York, if the mayor of New York, the most important city in the United States, arguably the world, can reject the American proposition while operating that city, then we don't have a propositional nation. If we're required to bring large amounts of people from a place we know is a disaster, that can't function in our society, that literally don't have the cognitive capacity to operate and basically survive off of scamming all of their money out of the government, then we can't have a proposition. Then we have to recognize the propositional nation just doesn't work. Hey guys, if you've been watching this show for a while, then you know that around here we encourage something that conservatives usually don't do. You know, winning. If you like what I'm doing here and you want to keep it going, then head over to Blaze TV. They have the behind-the-scenes content, exclusives, and documentaries that you're just not going to see anywhere else. So go to blazetv.com/Auron and subscribe today. The promo code is AURON, and you'll save $20 right now off the annual plan.